Recently, my family went to the National Aquarium of New Zealand in Napier for a sleepover. I was so excited that we would be spending the night sleeping with the sharks and fishes. I packed my bag and I was just lying on the bed when Mum called me.
Paddy, we're going now. Hurry up or we'll be late.
I rushed down the stairs. Man, was I excited. My 8-year-old twin brother Pete was already in the car with our 10-year-old brother Philip. When we arrived with our bags, a man greeted us at the door. He took us to the activity room where a lot of other families were waiting. The aquarium staff taught us about the aquarium and all the creatures in it. When we stopped to look in the big main tank, we saw a guy wearing his PJs, snorkeling around amongst the sharks and the fish. He made us laugh so loud we decided to nickname him Funny Man. Then we were taken on a tour around the aquarium so we could check out all the exhibits. Pete liked the sharks and Lizzie the crocodile best of all. My favourite was the giant squid, who I have nicknamed Lolly because I think she looks sweet. After the tour, we were shown to the exhibition hall where we would be spending the night. Everyone got busy setting up their sleeping bags and camper beds. I set up mine next to Lolly's tank. I couldn't help staring up at her and imagining swimming around free in the ocean. Just then, Pete called to me.
Paddy, what are you doing?
Just saying hi to Lolly, I said.
Paddy, Pete, dinner's here. Come and get your fish and chips.
Mum called. After dinner, everyone crowded around Lolly's tank while a staff member taught us all about her. Following that, there was a scavenger hunt around the whole aquarium, which was loads of fun. We played some more games and then we headed to the eel tank to feed him with Funny Man. He showed us how to hypnotise an eel and then he pulled it out of the water. I got such a surprise that I screamed, "Ah!" Then he dropped it on the floor. Philip kicked it and everyone laughed. Then I saw it was just a piece of black rubber hose. After that, it was time to head off to bed. I snuggled down in my cosy sleeping bag and looked up at all the fish swimming around the oceanarium. It was amazing. Just then, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. Then a spooky voice called me, "Paddy, Paddy." I was so scared. I started to shake in my sleeping bag. The voice was coming from the giant squid tank. I woke Pete, who was lying next to me. Meanwhile, in the giant crayfish tank, Keko was climbing on the rocks. He wanted to see how high he could climb. He climbed so high he could see out of the tank. He climbed higher and higher until he reached the top, but then he lost his footing and he fell out of the tank. He tried to get back in but couldn't, so he went to have a look about. Bluey, the blue-tongued skink from Australia, witnessed the whole thing from his tank on the upper level and raised the alarm.
Keko's gone walkabout, pass it on!
He told Bob and Sheila, the two Aussie water dragons. They passed it on to Lizzie the crocodile, who passed it on to the piranhas, who passed it on to the kiwis, who passed it on to the seahorses, who passed it on until the news reached the shark, who passed it on to Lolly, who whispered it to me. "Paddy, Paddy, can you hear me? Help me!" I was still a bit frightened, but I crept over to the tank with Pete anyway. We almost screamed at what we saw. The giant squid was moving its tentacles and had pressed its face against the glass of the wall of the tank. "What's the matter, Lolly?" I asked. Lolly explained what had happened and I nodded. "Who are you talking to?" asked Pete, a little confused. "There's just a stupid big squid in the tank." I told Pete that he had to believe me, that Lolly was communicating with me. Pete just rolled his eyes. I managed to convince him to come with me anyway. With a final look at Lolly, we set off to search for Keko. We went to his tank first to look for clues. We found a puddle of water and a wet trail leading towards the eel tank. Pete saw the puddle, saw the trail, and then his jaw hit the floor. He finally believed me. I fumbled in my dressing gown pocket for my torch and followed the trail. We had to turn the torch off outside the kiwi enclosure so we didn't disturb the kiwis. We lost the trail in the dark, so we had to look for more clues. Which way had he gone? We had gone past the kiwi enclosure and the torrent fish tank and was standing outside the bush hut exhibit. We had no idea where to look next. Just then, we heard a scratching noise coming from the direction of the kiwi enclosure. We went back to have another look. The kiwis were running around excitedly. Some were tapping on the glass with their beaks as if to point. We looked down. There in the bushes we saw Keko! He had got tangled up in the branches of the exhibit. We managed to free Keko and scooped him up into an empty bucket. I put my dressing gown over the bucket to stop him from snapping and pinching at us. Then we took him back to his tank and tipped him back in. I noticed there was a shiny little power shell on the bottom of the bucket, so I put it into my pyjama pocket and we crept back to our nice, cosy sleeping bags. Phew! The next morning I was shaken awake by Philip.
Time to get up, sleepyhead.
Pete yawned and said, "Oh, I had the most amazing dream." "Me too," I said, and winked at Pete. Back at home, we were unpacking. I felt something in my pyjama pocket. I reached inside and pulled out a shiny little power shell. I looked at Pete. Pete looked at me, and we both smiled.